Okay, in this video I wanted to quickly run through the syllabus for the course Engineering 1301, Introduction to Engineering. Okay, so first of all, I've already introduced myself. I'm Dr. Mike Thompson, and the most important way to contact me is through email. I try to be really responsive to email within at most a day. Okay, so I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Because it's an online course, we are going to do what I'm calling Zoom office hours, and it is important to be able to check in, take full advantage of the learning that that can take place by interacting with the instructor for Engineering 1301. Okay, so we're going to have regularly scheduled times for that and by appointment. So the way I envision this working is we're going to have the course happen asynchronously. We'll talk more about that in a second. But then there's regular times where we'll check in and we'll have discussions about what's going on in class and how I can help you and how you can pitch in and help your classmates. Okay? All right, so the syllabus has a catalog description for the course, and we're looking at topics from engineering disciplines, but it's really emphasizing the process of becoming an engineer. So we're going to work on various things that happen within engineering programs. We're going to work on problem solving. We're going to learn to use Excel. We're going to learn to use the Arduino. Lots of different things to help you develop as an engineer. Okay, so let's quickly go through some of the resources you're going to need. All right, we try to balance, we know Baylor's already expensive, so we try to balance the costs that come with taking a course. We know that textbooks are expensive, and so we try to find something that's reasonably priced so that the whole, when you add it all up, what you need for the course is not too terribly expensive. All right, so the book that we're looking at is Introduction to Engineering Analysis by Hagen. It's made by Pearson, published by Pearson. It's okay to have the online or electronic version of this book, so you can rent that electronically, and I think it's $25, something like that, really reasonable. Okay, another book that we want you to get is Engineering Your Future by Leone and Oakes. Okay, another thing that you might want to do, this is optional, engineering paper. Okay, engineering paper is kind of expensive, but it's something that sometimes is useful because it's got some grids in it that help you set up problems and make drawings and that kind of stuff. So use of engineering paper is optional, but I wanted you to be aware that you could use that. Okay, next, and this is going to be essential for an online class, you're going to need a laptop and a calculator. Okay, so we have recommendations on what laptop you should have for engineering at Baylor. You can click on this link and look at that recommendation, and it's going to emphasize the need for a Windows-based machine. Now, personally, I'm a Mac type of person, so I understand if you're already a Mac person, you might want to stay a Mac person. So for this class, certainly, the use of a Mac is acceptable. In fact, most of the time, people that go the route of a Mac are able to negotiate their way around and figure out how to stay on a Mac. But I just need you to warn you, there are going to be some challenges because most courses are set up for a Windows-based machine, and so that might mean you install a dual boot on your Mac, which is doable, but it's kind of a pain, or you could do some kind of software emulator. Usually my experience is the software doesn't work all that well under an emulator, so the dual boot thing is probably the way to go. Okay, so you can make that decision. You can do a Mac, but there's going to be some challenges. All right, we're going to make use of something called an Arduino kit. It actually is probably a clone of an Arduino processor. More details on this to come. It cost about $40 by the time you add in some shipping. And this will let us do some hands-on stuff that we weren't able to do unless you have a common set of parts. Okay, so The normal 1301 does not use the Arduino kit, all right, but normally, we have more equipment available for doing online experiments that can be done online. We're going to need this kit, okay? And so the good news is the Arduino kit is also used in 1302. So if you buy it now, you won't have to buy it for the next course. Okay, the other thing that we're going to do that is different from a regular version of Engineering 1301 is we're going to use MATLAB. This is not a programming class, so we're not going to use it in the traditional way of writing computer programs, but we're going to use it, okay? You'll see that with MATLAB you can set up some worksheets that help you do calculations and solve equations using symbolic math, and it's just going to be worthwhile to go ahead and install MATLAB on your PC or your computer. Okay, so it's important, don't buy this, it's expensive, don't buy it because Baylor purchases a license for student use. Okay, the other thing that you're going to need is Microsoft Office. Again, don't buy this, install this using the online installer and instructions you'll get for installing Microsoft Office. Okay, so this one's tricky, SolidWorks. I do want to try to use SolidWorks, but this is really hard to do on a Mac. Okay, if you're going to do it on a Mac, you would have to probably install Windows on the Mac with a dual boot. Okay, so if you go the route of not using a Windows machine, of using a Mac, we'll have to figure out either how to do SolidWorks or a workaround assignment that would take care of that. So SolidWorks is not a major part of the course. It's something I'd like to give you exposure to because we want to do some 3D printing. So if you're really a Mac person, go ahead and stay with a Mac and we'll figure out a solution for SolidWorks. Okay. Because this is an online course, sometimes I'll send you assignments that it'd be really helpful if you could just print those so that you can work on the paper that comes with those assignments. Okay. So it would go smoother if you have access to a printer. If you don't have access to a printer, you could probably get by without one. But I just want to let you know, if you can pick one up for cheap or already have one or have access to one, it would be useful. Okay. You also will need to be able to scan, okay? And your smartphone does a perfectly adequate job of scanning, so you don't need to buy a scanner. There's some apps that we use that work great for the purpose of scanning homework and that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm assuming you have a smartphone as well. In fact, you're going to need camera capability for your smartphone because you can use it as a scanner, and you can also use it to record some videos that I'm going to want you to record during the course. All right, the other thing that we're going to need is a webcam. All right, it's an online class. Many times I'm going to want to see, lay eyes on you to make sure you're understanding what we're talking about. So we're going to have some check-in times where you'll need to have that webcam on so I can have a face-to-face conversation with you. So those are the main things. All right. So next we get to the purpose of Engineering 1301. And as you can read here, the purpose of this course is introduce the student to the engineering profession. We want to help you understand what is engineering, what do engineers do, what are the different types of engineering that you can go into, what's the difference between science and engineering, okay? So in order to answer these questions, we just kind of put you into it, all right? We're going to have you read things, we're going to have you do homework assignments, we're going to have you do projects, and you're just going to learn to develop as an engineer. Okay, so that's the goal of this course. Truth be told, the specifics of what we're learning is not super important, okay? We're going to talk about statics and circuits and maybe digital logic, but we could have used other topics to illustrate this process of learning and how to solve problems in a systematic way and do the things that engineers do. Okay, so the process is super important. Okay, so we're going to be working on that. Okay, we have some broad goals. We want you to work on your identity as an engineer, feel a connection to the field, take responsibility for your own professional development. We're going to treat you like an adult and like a professional, and what we find is students really respond well to that. So it's fun to see. You start from not being an engineer and quickly move into that mindset of being an engineer and developing professionally. Okay, we're going to work on some of the fundamental sets of knowledge and skills that you're going to need. For example, we're going to talk about Excel and how to do things in Excel. We're going to talk about MATLAB, how to set up some calculations in MATLAB. Hopefully, you'll be really interested in these ideas, and it will help you become self-motivated because you'll accomplish this. When you solve a problem, it feels like an accomplishment. When you make a new project and your project works, it gives you self-motivation. Okay, and so we want you to have that confidence to move forward in your other engineering classes. Okay, then in item D, we talk about understanding the relationship between stakeholders. What do engineers do? What do scientists do? What's it take to be a business person, and how does that relate to engineering? We'll talk about technicians and how engineers interface with technicians, and of course we're going to have customers in mind so that when we do design projects we'll have a set of specifications, that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to not cover all the objectives, but you can read through this list of objectives where we want you to accomplish certain things in the course. Okay, so some of the major topics that we'll talk about include the design process, and we're going to just throw you right into that. And design is a tricky thing, right? It's a creative thing. There's no one set of ways to do that. And in fact, I would make the argument that design as an electrical and computer engineer looks a little bit different than design as a mechanical engineer, for example. So we'll talk about those things. Okay, we'll bring up some of the ethical behaviors and things that come up in the practice of engineering. Well, I've already mentioned this. We're going to talk about Excel. We're going to do a little bit of circuits. We're going to do a little bit of what mechanical engineers do, statics, and some heat transfer and fluid mechanics, and a little bit of thermodynamics. We're hoping to use 3D printing software. We're going to do the Arduino. I didn't mention that in this list, but you get the idea. We're going to do lots of things in the course. Okay, now the details about the online part. It's going to be asynchronous delivery, which means I'm going to give you a set of things to do every week with due dates, and you're going to go through this in something called Canvas. Okay, and so with Canvas there'll be a module that you complete for every week. You'll see how that works, and it'll help you keep organized in the course. Okay, so I do plan to have weekly check-in times, at least a couple of times a week, where you can check in with me to tell me how things are going. We can solve any problems that you might have to get you resources where you might need help with a certain problem, that kind of thing. Okay, so weekly check-in times will also happen. Okay, when you set up your Canvas page, we'll talk about this when we do a weekly check-in. You're going to have to set up the notifications. Okay, you don't want to miss things. Like if I change a due date, you want to know about it, or if I make a new assignment, you want to know about it. However, if you have the notification set wrong, you'll just be getting pinged all the time. You know how irritating that is when notifications are set too stringently. Okay, so you can play around with those. These are the recommended settings that I grabbed from another professor, but you can set that up as you like. All right. Next on the list here is something called GradeScope. GradeScope is an online service that helps organize the grading and submission of materials. Okay, so you'll submit some things onto GradeScope, and then I'll be able to grade those and give you feedback. So we'll talk about how that works as well when we get the course up and running. Okay, of course there'll be homework assignments. Those are usually going to be submitted through GradeScope, but a lot of the quizzes will be done directly into Canvas. All right, so let's see. With homework, I tend to have a pretty liberal policy where it's okay for you to work together on homework. What I don't want you to do is Googling for online solutions and just ripping off people. That violates the honor code at Baylor, so you need to be able to reproduce the work as you know, show me that you know it. All right, that doesn't mean you can't talk to someone. In general, I allow that to happen, but you shouldn't just copy someone else's work and turn it in as your own. We'll talk more about academic integrity as the course goes along. Okay. Typically, hang on. Okay, typically I do allow late work, but it will always have a penalty associated with it. All right, so the reason I allow late work to happen is because I realize things just come up, all right? And so you'll be able to turn things in late, but if you do, you're going to suffer a penalty. You might as well get it in on time, okay? So we'll talk more about that should it become an issue. All right. This may be your first college course. If it is, you should know that the syllabus is important because we talk about the grade calculation. All right, so there's actually going to be an Excel homework where you set up an Excel spreadsheet that shows how to calculate the grades. But basically, we're going to take what I call assignments, which would be homeworks, labs, other. I say other. I should put quizzes down here. All that adds together to 25% of the course, okay? Then we're going to have 3 exams, 15% each. So, of course, exams are important. Then we're going to have a design project, all right, that happens towards the end of the course. That's going to count for 10% of your grade. And then we have a final exam that's 20%, okay? All right, so the grading scale is also something that shows up in the syllabus. So typically, I just publish the regular straightforward A, B, C, D, F grading scale as you see here. Sometimes I'll assign plus and minus grades, but you're guaranteed that if you have an average above 90%, you will get an A, okay? If your average is above 80%, you will get a B. Okay, so if I do plus and minus grades, I shade it in your favor. Okay, another important thing that we need you to be able to do and need to be able to show is mastery of the subject. Okay, so we have a rule that if your final exam, all right, so let me highlight that. If your final exam is less than 60, we reserve the right to issue a failing grade for the course. Okay. Now it might be something happened to cause that, and we wouldn't necessarily enforce this rule, but we need you to take that final exam seriously and be able to show that you know the content of the course. Okay. The next thing that's really important. Okay. Let me flag this. Your grade that shows up in Canvas is not your actual grade. Okay. Canvas has a way of keeping track of grades, but some of the grades are not going to show up in Canvas. Some of the grades are going to show up in GradeScope, like your exam grades. Okay, so it's possible to have your Canvas grade showing up in Canvas as like a 95, but your real average might be lower, like 65. Okay, that's theoretically possible. So you can't count on Canvas to keep track of your grades in the course. All right, so we'll talk about that. We're going to set up a spreadsheet so you can keep track of your grades. Okay, the rest of this is details for academic success. Academic integrity is a big issue with online courses. We'll probably have some type of proctoring system set up for online exams. It's not that I don't trust you in general. I just think it's a bad idea to set it up to where, if we have a few bad apples in the bunch that don't enforce their academic integrity, then it hurts everyone. So we'll set up something to try to maintain academic integrity for online exams, and you should be aware of the Baylor Honor Code policy and work with integrity. Okay, the rest of this has notifications about students needing accommodations. If you feel like you fall in that category, there's an Office of Learning and Accommodations that you can talk to. We also have some policies about Title IX that you should be aware of, and a statement in the syllabus for military students. Okay, so that's a quick review of the syllabus. When we check in the first day, you can let me know if you have any questions about it.